people who are leaders.
Who's the greater the effect? Gives a strong opioid effect, but at a medium level,
I see a young man who a lot of who have tried.
this is a new day. This is a new day. Show up and share. To the people that are backbone.
We are the lifeguards of tomorrow. We are creating the future by predicting the future.
That the only way you can predict the future is to make it happen.
This is the vision that each one of us can help save ourselves, our family, our friends, our clients, and our patients.
Is to deal with our fellow human beings on this earth with compassion and a recognition that there by the grace of God go I.
So anyway, the drug court in Mahoning County, our next door neighbor, we've talked about and touched about, but more importantly, if I could, and I hope I don't distract you or send you off the wrong place, but I'd really like to talk about what's going on legislatively in Ohio, our next door neighbor, on an attempt to change the Constitution in Ohio.
Correct.
Can we start there?
Absolutely.
And this takes us right into marijuana and grass, okay? So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you.
As Angelo said, my name is Brenda Heidinger. I'm with the Mahoning County.
It's getting late. I forgot to do that part.
I'm with the Mahoning County Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services Board, as he said, just over the border in Mahoning County. We have a proposed constitutional amendment in the state of Ohio, proposed by the Ohio Rights Group. It's a simple little two-page, don't think it's a big deal, that is the Ohio Cannabis Rights Amendment. And the reason Angelo asked me to come and talk about it today, and I'm going to try and make it so it pertains to Pennsylvania in this way. We're very close, and don't be fooled, it's going to come over your borders. If it happens in Ohio, you're going to see it in Pennsylvania. I know you have some legislature action right now. I haven't been following that as closely, but this constitutional amendment that is proposed in the state of Ohio, they have until July to collect the remainder of the signatures, and then it would be on the ballot. Some of the issues that we're out talking to people about throughout our area is the unintended consequences of this potential amendment. The amendment allows anyone over the age of 18 with one of 20 conditions to be an eligible resident, and anyone under the age of 18 with one of the 20 conditions and parental permission to also be an eligible resident. The way the amendment is written, it prevents them being discriminated against for their use of medical cannabis. It never mentions a physician. It never mentions a prescription. It simply says that they have to have one of these conditions to become an eligible citizen. They will decide how much they need to alleviate their suffering. So there are some unintended consequences in this nice short little constitutional amendment that we're looking at, that we're talking to communities about. It does not address signage. So your children and your families could be exposed to billboards and signs within your communities. Local communities are going to have to set up ordinances very quickly as to where places can be located. We're also looking at what's going to happen in schools. If children under the age of 18 are allowed to be eligible citizens, will the school have to provide a place for them to dose with their marijuana? Now that can be edibles, not just smoked. The law does, this amendment does state that you can't smoke marijuana anywhere, you can't smoke a cigarette. And in Ohio, you can't smoke a cigarette in any public place unless it's outdoors. So you can be exposed to smoke in a park, you could, but what does the school do? This is a school building. So your teachers, your custodians, your administrators would all be able to use as legal residents or as eligible citizens. The students would be able to use. Where would that happen and how would that happen? I don't know about here in PA, but I know in Ohio that kids can't carry an aspirin with them during the school day. It has to be locked up. So who's responsible for holding the marijuana? The principal, the school nurse? Who holds it? What kind of storage has to be done? When we talk about businesses, what's going to happen? Again, you'll have to rewrite all your workplace policies on drug and alcohol use, and you run the risk of a discrimination lawsuit. Because of the way this is written, it gives them the right to use. So you're looking at a potential discrimination suit, which in Colorado they found runs about $67,000 to $107,000 just to defend. That's before any kind of judgment. So there's a lot of issues around this that are going to cross the border. In Colorado right now, the state of Colorado is being sued by the surrounding states as they are suing them for the cost of patrolling the borders and taking care of people that carry the cannabis over the border. And they're having a lot of other issues that I'm sure you've heard in the news. A young man recently jumped after eating a whole cookie when he was only supposed to eat a sixth, but he didn't think it was working fast enough, so he ate the whole cookie. And he was someone there on spring break. They are touting it as someplace to go, someplace to travel, someplace for spring break where you can legally use cannabis, because in Colorado it is recreational use as well. But we have all those concerns about this potential constitutional amendment in Ohio, and generally I do this a little more interactively with questions and answers around anything that you think this might affect, or that may come up in your business or in your communities and locations. I don't know if any of you have any concerns like that you wish to express, but I'm sure that if this passes, there will be stores as close to the border as they can possibly get. So it is going to come across that border. Angela, did you have any questions? I know you had some things you wanted to talk about.
And John, you're still up there in Hale and Hardy. And by the way, we were talking about these bleachers, okay? And we're going to do something about the bleacher issue. Okay. Those of you who are sitting out there and watching online have no clue what the people who are sitting here live in front of me are enduring by way of comfortable seats. Okay. So that's it. John, do you recognize the concept of a constitutional amendment? Why that's different?
It's different because it'll take longer than a regular statute.
But once done, let's go that way. Once done, once it becomes a constitutional amendment, if that would happen, then no legislator, I don't want to give you a government lesson here, but we have constitutional law, we have statutory law. Statutory law must be consistent with what's the Constitution. And so if this breakthrough happens in the Constitution, our lawyers out there can tell you that it makes it that much more difficult to ever change this course statutorily. And we know that senators and representatives change the law, but we also know the Constitution is done in a totally different atmosphere. Correct. So you see that all the time right now, and some of you have a lot of passion on the abortion issue, for example. It doesn't matter. You've seen every year you'll hear of laws that are being struck down because they're inconsistent with the Constitution on that issue. Mm-hmm. So having this become a constitutional issue is itself something that is very, very...
In Ohio, it would be huge because we have a whole formula based on the last election of the gubernatorial election that's how many signatures you have to collect to change so much as one word.
And how many counties do you have in Ohio?
We have 88 counties, 44 of them. You have to have at least 5% of the last gubernatorial election. What it comes down to is they have to have 365,000 signatures to get this on the ballot. So to change one word, we would have to have 365,000 signatures just to get it back on the ballot.
That doesn't mean you have to have 365,000 signatures for every word.
No, but to get it back on the ballot to vote on anything.
So once on in the Constitution, it would take that to bring it off. And then there's that other issue as to whether or not that's a coming trend, you know. And we know that other states now make it legal, not necessarily constitutionally.
None of the other states are constitutional. Ohio would be the first constitutionally. And if you look at this group's website, they have a very nice banner that says Ohio in 2014, industrial hemp and cannabis, medical cannabis, and U.S. in 2016. As goes Ohio, so goes the country, which we've all heard in elections for years. So they would really be then, Ohio's kind of their testing ground for this constitutional
and similar, and states that have it right now, off the top of your head, who?
There are 18 states that have it. Most of them are located in the West.
The latest one was what, Colorado?
Colorado and Washington State have recreational as well as medicinal.
Okay, so they're further along.
The other states are simply medicinal, and it includes California, parts of Delaware, Washington, D.C. There are some states on the East Coast, but most of them are out west.
And I'm going to engage my lawyers out there and my lawyers in here, okay? And let's start thinking now of a world. Let's get off of this Village Mores issue and start thinking of a world in which we live. A person driving under the influence of, let's go to Colorado. Is that one of the states you said has?
Colorado and the other states.
Has recreational.
Colorado has recreational.
So okay, I'm going to make you all live in Colorado right now. You're all in Colorado, okay? And we decided to go out and smoke some weed at Applebee's today. We would be allowed to do that.
Correct.
We'd be sitting there saying, "Excuse me, young lady, can I have another roach over here or something like that?" Anyway, kind of liven up a little bit. So, and I do this weed or something in Colorado, some other scenario. I'm just trying to make a point here. Don't be offended, you academians out there. Anyway, so I get high. We know that it impairs me.
Correct.
I go out and drive my car. Now we know that even in that state, because it's still legal to smoke marijuana recreationally, it is still, I think, illegal to drive when you cannot drive to a car. But how does the government prove it?
Well, Colorado has left...
Think about that when you defense attorneys.
Colorado has left metabolite testing in effect under their law. So they use the federal standard of 50 nanograms per milliliter, and they can do... They can do a urine test. A metabolite is what your body breaks the drug down into, not the drug itself. So they've left that testing in place. That's the urine test that you hear everybody took a urine test to test for marijuana. Colorado and the other states have all left that in place. Ohio, under this constitutional amendment, would be the first one where any metabolite testing is eliminated. It will not be allowed to be used to prove impairment in the state of Ohio if this constitutional amendment passes. Every test we currently use for marijuana is a metabolite test. So that will leave our law enforcement having to do field sobriety and appearing in court to testify against any defendant to charge them, because we'll have no scientific test.
Okay, now, does that sound like a fruitful bed? I see one of our seasoned defense attorneys just walk in here. Does that sound like a place you died and went to heaven if you're a defense attorney, right? Yeah, I guess you're probably going to relocate to Ohio. Kidding aside, let's go back, though. I want to talk about metabolites again. I'm going to go, we all have some grasp of DUI law now. It's been with us for a while. Now, not all that long, though, in legal history. DUI, we know, we just saw in our mock trial, those of you online, you saw a young man who was driving and he was .07. Okay, that's important for you, because currently in Pennsylvania, it is what? Help me, counselor. 0.08. So, okay, .08 means that you could be some burly longshoreman truck driver and you could drink that stuff and just sneeze it off and you can drive better than I can. Well, that's not much of a test, by the way. I'm glad my daughter's not here. But this burly truck driver, if he's .08, no matter how perfect he is, and he can thread a needle with that 18-wheeler, he would be illegal. That is a matter of law. We have said that. Right, Counselor? All right. Now, we know where the law is. We also know that sometimes a person is not at the legal limit, but he has just crashed into several cars. I always like to throw a personal story in. It kind of keeps you guys a lot. When I was a prosecutor in Lawrence County, I remember I used to have conversations with the police officers. And it was kind of fun to hear their stories. There was a CB radio once going on in Newcastle, and there was this, and some of you who live there may even remember it, there was this squawk box going on that somebody just hit a car. They just hit another car. They just hit another. There was a person hitting cars all over Newcastle. Apparently this guy was drunk and he was just bouncing off of everybody. So they got everybody's state policeman out there, and my state policeman friend says that a couple later, he's the only one left in the barracks. Somebody's pounding on the window. Hey, yeah, can I help you? There's somebody, a bunch of people following me, and I want to make a complaint. It's him, right? And this is some giant of a man. And the policeman didn't have much help even at the barracks. It was like everybody was gone. Apparently, as the story completes, he realized who he was. He got somebody back there. They shot him with a taser several times. It didn't even, like Godzilla with the bi-wing airplanes shooting at him on the Empire State Building. He went berserk and he ran out and he got underneath a police car, and then they were tasing him again, and he ripped off the exhaust of a police car and was hitting them in the legs with the muffler, okay? And so that guy obviously could, hypothetical, help me attorneys, that guy, even if he was under the legal limit, could he be charged with driving illegally DUI?
Based upon their observation of his ability to safely drive, yes.
Yeah, he bounced off all those cars. He shed all those tasers. He's beating up policemen with a muffler. Duh, he could be impaired. Okay, so the law allows us both latitudes on that issue. Okay, so that's kind of like the status of the law. Remember, our young man who is our co-defendant was .07. He was under the legal limit. There was no testimony that he was bouncing off of cars, so we have no testimony to determine whether he's impaired, right? Okay, so another little point why it's important for the impairment count of a DUI, and I believe that's sub 4, or is it sub 1 in the statute? Technical question, don't need it. 1, okay. So we know people have the right to refuse blood tests, and if they had a right, if they didn't have a blood test and we had evidence, then they could be illegal. There. Right. So sound. Ohio, same way. We're okay. In Pennsylvania, because this kid was not 18 years old yet, he was illegal, even though he had not reached the legal limit. It is .0, what, people? Attorneys? 2. If you're, okay? So, now, let's take that now, and we know all about proving under the influence by circumstances impaired or blood alcohol, and we know the blood is drawn at a hospital, and we know it's real, everybody's used and feels comfortable with BACs. Tell me again a little bit more about the testing for a person, the metabolite issue.
Okay.
Let me ask you, because you already said it so well, and
Right.
make sure I'm not getting it though. To test somebody for the influence of marijuana, we measure something called a metabolite.
Correct.
A metabolite is something
That your body breaks the drug down into.
right. So when I inhaled the smoke, it turned the smoke into the metabolite.
Right.
And the presence of those metabolites are enough to convince a court that the person, in addition to impaired, could not legally drive.
Correct.
Okay. Now, is that DUI law? We know that they want to draw the blood right away. These metabolites, does that fluctuate with?
Yes, metabolites do fluctuate, especially with marijuana. If a chronic user of marijuana can still show metabolites weeks after their last ingestion. However, that number continues to shrink because it's a medical measurement like anything else. Just like the BAC continues to shrink over a period of time, the cannabis metabolites continue to shrink over a period of time.
And that extrapolation that we call that is itself another bed of headaches for a prosecutor, opportunity for a defense counsel, right? An opportunity for an abuser. Now, what we're saying is that's probably a lot harder even when you do have the metabolite chart. So generally speaking, even in the state of law right now in Ohio and Pennsylvania, it is harder to prove somebody illegally driving under the influence of grass than it is alcohol, or is it the reverse?
Well, it's easier now because marijuana is illegal. So it's not so much that you were driving under the influence, it's that you had an illegal substance, period.
Okay, however, though, I'm the defendant, okay, I'm giving you a hypothetical here. I'm saying, yeah, I smoked weed, but I smoked it at Apple, I smoked it, you know, let's forget about the illegal part. I smoked that 3 weeks ago.
Right. Well, generally, somebody that smoked it 3 weeks ago is not going to be impaired, is not going to show impaired driving.
Like a law professor, though, I'm going to snug, like a law professor, I'm going to snug up my hypothetical. Let's make it 2 days ago.
Okay.
Okay? Because if I drank alcohol 2 days ago, it would be very difficult to prosecute that guy for driving under the influence.
Correct.
Okay. So 2 days ago, tell me about metabolites.
2 days ago, you're most likely, you're no longer impaired, so you're going to be driving okay. The metabolites will still be in the system, but they'll be below that threshold.
So how many metabolites can be in your system and you would still be illegal driving under the influence in Ohio now?
In Ohio, they have to pick you up for being impaired or showing impairment.
So there is not just in your system.
It's not just the in your system. But like Colorado, all the states kind of use that federal limit of the 50 nanograms per milliliter as kind of the measurement of smoked recently versus smoked a long time ago.
And again, just for the purpose of our people online out here and whatnot, and some of our teachers and whatnot don't need to know this, but that formula again, the milligrams?
50 nanograms per milliliter is
15 nanograms per milliliter
is the cut. Yeah,
is the cut.
Is the federal cut.
And now what we're saying is that now when you start saying somebody is legally allowed to use marijuana, that really takes us way up in a place where it's genuinely already hard to get a conviction.
It does. And while we don't have a whole lot of data because marijuana, or Colorado and Washington State are kind of the canaries in the coal mine here for us right now, and they've only been recreational for a year and they've been medicinal for about 6 years. In that medicinal period, Colorado, under their high-intensity drug trafficking area report, has found that while total traffic fatalities have gone down, the amount of traffic fatalities involving a positive test for cannabis have more than doubled in a 6-year period.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat that again.
Under the Colorado's HIDTA report, or HIDTA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Report, they have found that while their overall traffic fatalities have gone down over those 6 years, their traffic fatalities that involve positive cannabis test of the accident victims is more than doubled.
Okay. Now, and again, leaving that behind, there is a group now trying to get medicine, but we know that it's a slippery slope. He who gets medicinal use eventually tries to get recreation use probably.
Right, and the way this constitutional amendment is written, in the state of Ohio, we would vote on the constitutional amendment, which would then set up what's called a cannabis commission of 9 members, 6 of whom are appointed by the people who wrote the amendment, and then they'll make the rules. And they can add to the 20 conditions that make you an eligible citizen. Now, the conditions range from ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease and cancer all the way to chronic pain, chronic headaches, chronic nausea. So, yeah, I mean, it's
What are the medical reasons in most of the states?
They're about the same, but in...
What is the range, the medical reason in most of the states that already have it?
Most of the states have the same kind of conditions that the state of Ohio
and the
does.
medical range is how far? I mean, cancer?
Anything from cancer and ALS and serious terminal diseases down to chronic headaches, chronic nausea, chronic
So generally
pain.
speaking, a state that does legalize medicinal marijuana would probably reach chronic pain.
Correct. And what they have found is in this, out of the 17 states, those that actually track the diagnosis of the clients, only 5% of the people that have a medical marijuana prescription have a serious life-threatening disease that we think of like cancer or ALS or even MS. 95% of their their users are 35-year-old white males with a history of substance abuse. That's their average user. 95% of them report chronic pain or chronic headaches.
Which brings us to another issue now, and that is the issue of the defensibility or the prosecutorial ability of having a case like that and having a defense of a letter from a doctor saying this person has chronic pain, which I believe in my professional expertise makes it necessary that he smoke marijuana.
Well,
Okay.
and actually for the attorneys in the room, by this constitutional amendment, there is a line in there that states that even if you are not, if you haven't been determined to be an eligible citizen by the cannabis card, medical need is still a, how do they say it?
It's a burden of proof issue. It's an
not
affirmative defense.
It's affirmative defense
All right.
in court.
I'll send you the bill.
So.
It's affirmative defense.
Right.
Now again, counselors, you know what that means, that even if my statute doesn't protect me, if I have that letter, I can use it as an affirmative defense to a prosecution. And let's talk about that. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm beating the drum here because we have a wonderful pain management program that we're going to be doing, but we know that there's a lot of pain management issues. Remember, we talked about this brand new drug that's crushable, that's 10 times more powerful than Vicodin, and people in this business will tell you that the medical community at times makes it very difficult for us to rein in pain meds, much less can I get a letter from some doctor somewhere that says that I can use at least an affirmative defense,
Right.
if not an outright defense, quite
Right.
frankly, if to say I go to the doctor and he's prescribed medical marijuana. So, and again, we're educators, right? A lot of you in here. So I want to talk to you about this idea of the slippery slope. I'm asking for opinions now, and this is an opinion, by the way. This doesn't even say it's an opinion of the coalition here. I believe that discussions of legalization start with marijuana, start with medicinal, and they become a surrender of sorts. Are we so captivated by the failure of our efforts in our drug war? And that's why we're here, by the way. But is it possible that the failure of the drug war is so powerful? Somebody's going to say, yeah, you heard Angela Papas say that 5% of the world's population, and only 5%, and 25% are in our prisons, $20 million every 24 hours. This drug problem is just killing us. And they buy that, and then they make the next jump, which is we should start legalizing because Portugal does it or something like that, right? So you as teachers and whatnot, and you're experts in behavior. Does that bother you that we would legalize something? Are we surrendering, okay? Are we starting to back off because we can't do anything about it?
Well, I think in the case of marijuana, because they have found some medicinal uses for it, that's aided this push towards legalization. And understand that, I mean, even from our board's perspective and our stance on this in Ohio is that use the FDA process, continue to do that research, don't shut down the research, continue to do it, don't paint marijuana with this horrible bad brush, because there are some cannabinoids in the plant that can be helpful in certain conditions. But by all means, let's not legalize it just because we can't get around to that or the FDA isn't doing it fast enough.
I.e., let's start and maintain a learned debate. And certainly let's not box ourselves in with a constitutional amendment, because we all know the legislative process in passing a statute starts with hearings in front of the Senate, in front of the House of Representatives, public hearings, all the good and bad. You know, in a courtroom we call that attorney, defense attorney and prosecutor, we call that the anvil of litigation.
Right.
The anvil of litigation is a big piece of raw steel where a hammer comes down from the prosecutor and a hammer comes down from the defendant, and the judge is sitting there watching the fight. And when it's all over, we have a piece of tempered steel, but it is the product of both competing interests. It's not somebody who happened to amass a more powerful lobbying group. So those are the kind of things that I think need to come to the schoolhouse. Just an example, studies have shown, you know, and we have your sister state over here, we know that drinking, at least once upon a time, you could drink at 18 over there. 21. And it's 21 here. It used to be, okay, and I can tell you I was in YSU at the time, and we couldnn't wait till we went into that big archway over there at 422, and there was 25 cents was a gallon of gas, by the way. 25.9, I'll never forget that, was a gallon of gas back then. I probably have socks older than some of the people in this audience, but 25.9, and at that time you could drink what's called 3-2 beer. It wasn't the same alcohol content. It was, hey, let's go get some 3-2 beer. You know, just, God, I mean, I'm still not a good beer drinker, but, and so the concept is related to what we're saying in the following. Studies had shown, don't have them in front of me, I'm just repeating what I read a long time ago, that if you reduce the age of drinking, if you reduce the age of speed, or increase the speed limit, people tend to challenge the law slightly higher or lower. Studies have shown that if I can drink at 18, I'll drink at 16. If I can do 70, I'll do 80. Okay? And that debate has been a debate among the states for years. So teachers, doesn't that bother you that legalizing marijuana might tend to be this behavioral erosion again, where we start stepping backward and desensitizing and all that stuff like that? A debate. All I want to do here is start and hopefully continue a debate. That's Angelo Papa's opinion. Okay.
Well, and actually you're very correct. The National Household Drug Use Study that comes out annually just came out this last fall and shows that the 17 states that have medical marijuana are in the top 20 for 12 to 17-year-old usage of marijuana.
Prosecutor Emick down there at, in West Virginia, what do you guys got on medical marijuana and otherwise? It's illegal, right?
It's illegal.
Okay, what is your BAC down there for an underage kid?
I think it's 0.0. I don't think you can have anything.
It's anything. These people are crazy, tough on DUIs. I know that people come out of those gambling institutions right across the state line there. First DUI, what do you got?
They just changed it on an automatic report. I don't think it's any jail time anymore.
Okay, but it used to be.
It used to be, but I don't think it is.
You had to go to jail. There was no ARD.
Right.
Right. It's very much more tough on you down in West Virginia and all of those states like that. But anyway, it helps us to know these things because these debates have taken place in other House of Representatives and Senates and things like that. I mean, why would we just be so provisional that we say we have no impact on our sister states and all that stuff? Okay, so now I think we've covered the medical marijuana, the recreational marijuana, and again, these people in Mahoning County are part of our Facebook. Andrew has that up there. And this research, they'll be making posts so that you can always get the latest information.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you this, I'll do my part and do whatever I can or sign any kind of petition. I'm an old accountability guy. And I think, again, it's an Angelo Papa opinion here. This is an opinion area of our program. I believe that now with all of these medical breakthroughs, and we talked about medical assistance on substance abuse, and we'll touch base on that in a minute here, again in more detail, but now seems to be no time to just surrender and go into the legalizing thing. Now, have we covered everything that you wanted to cover on marijuana?
Good. Thank you.
And Amy, your cohort, she works for you. Amy will be here, and she'll be teaching in the morning at 8:30 for you attorneys.